for staying with us. UNICEF says about 250,000 children have been displaced by the escalating crisis in Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado. The United Nations Children's Agency says the children are now at risk of malnutrition and cholera as the rainy season sets in. They're also concerned that there are insufficient water and hygiene services. Daniel Timme, the Chief of Communication for Mozambique's UNICEF, joins us now via Skype. Thank you very much, Mr. Timme, for joining us. You're live on eNCA. Now, describe to us some of the situations that you found these 250,000 children in. I believe some of them have been displaced and are in homes because of some of the natural disasters that have been happening there.
Yeah, I just came back from the northern province of Cabo Delgado, and what I found there, I must say, is very worrisome. If you travel just 1 hour from the provincial capital of Pemba, you arrive in the town of Metuje, and there tens of thousands of people have found refuge in temporary accommodation camps, and they live there in pretty miserable conditions. Half of these people are children, and they are literally sitting in the mud on mats, and there are some tarpaulin sheets, but it's highly inadequate how they are living. They need shelter, they need food, they need water and sanitation, medicine, and of course we also need to take care of their psychological well-being, because many of these children have seen terrible atrocities.
Now, of course, there's also the COVID-19 pandemic that the entire globe is fighting. How are these children and their mothers being kept at these shelters? Are COVID-19 protocols being properly observed there?
Yeah, that's one of the big problems we are facing right now. Many of us are at the moment complaining that we need to isolate and live in distance from other people to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. But let us remind us that this is actually a luxury, because these tens of thousands of people, they don't have the possibility to keep distance. They are literally sitting next to each other, to the thousands on mats. They don't have proper water and sanitation. And of course, we urgently need to upgrade this now that the rainy season is coming, not only to prevent the further spread of COVID-19, but also the spread of waterborne diseases like the cholera, and also simple diarrhea, which can be deadly for children, especially because many of them are malnourished.
Of course, you have a lot of concerns that you've raised as UNICEF about these children that are being displaced. What is it that the organization is doing to perhaps assist?
Yeah, as I said before, we need to take care of the most urgent physical needs, but also of the psychological needs of these children. Many of them have seen terrible things happening. I met a 10-year-old girl named Maria, and she was there in one of these camps, and she told me her story. Her village was attacked, and in the middle of the night, people burnt down her family's house, and they gathered everybody and forced them to watch decapitations. And Maria ran into the forest. Her parents were killed. And you can imagine that this leaves traces on the souls of these children. And we urgently need to upgrade our psycho-social support for these children. We do this with case workers who go to the families and see what the needs are. And these are professionally trained people. But since the crisis has rapidly escalated, when we had only 90,000 displaced in the beginning of the year, now we have 500,000. We also need now to rapidly bring our response to scale. And for that, we also need the support from the world community, because all this is depending on funding.
Of course, Mozambique is also a part of the SADC region. Has UNICEF been able to probably have some sort of conversation with SADC about what's happening in Mozambique?
We are mainly concerned with the humanitarian response. Obviously, the conflict up in Cabo Delgado is also spilling over the borders and concerning the neighboring countries. But our main concern is at the moment that we respond properly, and we have an appeal of $52 million for Mozambique, and we are trying to provide proper medical care. We are trying to provide proper water and sanitation now in the onset of the rainy season. We are trying to treat nutrition because many children are malnourished, not only because of this crisis, but you might remember that last year in the same province there was a tropical cyclone called Kenneth, which devastated the province, destroyed harvests, and all these subsequent problems, the cyclone, the conflict, and COVID-19 and the economic hardship have contributed to a situation of food insecurity, which has led to malnourishment. And this makes the children even weaker, and they are even more likely to become seriously sick from diseases that could normally be treated easily.
Of course, you are asking for the $52 million, but there's also another amount that you're asking for, $30 million as well. Tell us exactly how this will be able to assist in your efforts to help these children and their mothers.
Yeah, 52 million is the UNICEF's appeal for the whole of Mozambique, because we had last year, you might remember, also a terrible disaster in central Mozambique, and we are still working on this response. 30 million is now for the victims of the conflict and displaced people in the northern province of Cabo Delgado. There is a subsequent series of disasters here, and children and their families just don't seem to get a break. The population usually is very resilient here, and people are used to help each other, and it's quite impressive. There's host families that are hosting up to 40, 50 people in their tiny houses, but the population comes to a limit now, because one disaster is really following the other, and people now cannot do without our and other humanitarian actors' support. But we are facing a serious lack of funding, and we are appealing, as do other humanitarian actors, to not forget this crisis. Even if it's happening during a global pandemic, it's threatening tens of thousands of children's lives.
What is the government of Filipe Nyusi saying about what's happening to these children and their families?
Whatever we do as the United Nations and UNICEF, we're working together with the government on the humanitarian response. And the working relation with the government is very good. But since it's such a rapid onset, only in a few months of time, so many people were displaced and find themselves in this situation now with the upcoming rainy season. The government and the humanitarian organizations are at a challenging situation at the moment, and we are cooperating very well, but we will need support to shoulder this serious humanitarian crisis.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That is Chief of Communication from Mozambique, UNICEF, Daniel Timme.